Good evening. Welcome and thank you for coming tonight. My name is David Nelson. I'm the editor of the Kitsap Sun. And you are at a community forum that we're calling How Are We Making Sure Our Kids Are Safe in Schools? The reason we're here tonight predicated a little bit on the national news. In February there was a shooting in Florida that drew a lot of attention, and the aftermath of that has continued this momentum and this conversation. We're not here to have a debate about gun politics, though the issue may come up, but we're here to talk about what is being done in this community to keep kids safe, and how can you play a part in talking to your kids, in talking to other people in town, to make sure something like this, to minimize the chance that something like this wouldn't have. I don't know if we could ever say for sure it would never, but we can do our best. The Kitsap Sun, we published a number of columns late in February and early in March, and a few of the people who were sitting up here wrote those for us. We tried to start the dialogue over what people can do and what you can be talking about. And when Aaron called me to say they'd like to do something more public, we jumped right on board, and I thought it was a great idea, a great way for the school district and the Sun and the city to all connect. What that means is I need to say thanks. First, I need to say thank you to Aaron and Monica Sweet, who's the principal of Bremerton High School. Both of them have been real welcoming and real open in generating these ideas. I want to say thanks to the city of Bremerton, because Mayor Greg Wheeler, right at the beginning, was also really involved, really interested in having this conversation. How it's going to work tonight is the 5 people to my left are going to each give a presentation. They come from different perspectives on the issue. They have different experience, different knowledge they can share. They'll each take a few minutes, and then I'm going to call a few other people up front, and we'll let you ask the questions that you have. We have a reporter, Chris Henry, is in the room. She's going to have a microphone. So once we get through the presentations, just raise your hand. She'll see you. She'll come over. Let's be here till 7:30 or so if it goes that long. But we want to hear what you have to, what you are curious about, what would help you understand the issue, and what would help move the community forward. I'll introduce the panelists now. To my left is Dr. Naran Al-Ajba. She's a pediatrician in Silverdale. Naran's also part of the National Physicians Council, so she talks about healthcare at a national level, and this is an issue that's close to her because she was working in Columbine, or in Denver, Colorado, when the Columbine shooting happened. So she has experience as a physician in what that situation is like. She also has experience in talking to parents, talking to kids with anxiety, talking to kids who have worries and fears, and so that's what she's going to talk about today. Next to her is Superintendent Dana Rosenbach. Dana's from North Mason School District, and the reason we asked her to speak is because North Mason went through a scare themselves. They had what they thought was an active shooter on their campus. There was a lot of interest in that issue that day. She learned a lot, and their district has had conversations about the experience, and she wants to share some of that with us so we can understand better what a parent can do, what you can know if that ever should happen. Next to her is Dr. Aaron Leavell. He's the superintendent of Bremerton Schools, and he's going to talk about what the district is already doing and what the district is also thinking about doing, and some other things like that. And then at the other table are Chief Jim Burchett and Officer Kenny Davis, both from the Bremerton Police Department. Jim's going to talk about just to give us some context from a law enforcement perspective on this issue. And then Kenny, he's the school resource officer for the school district, and so he can speak specifically about what he does every day, which I think is a fascinating thing. What does he see? What does he talk about with kids? How do they know him? The other people in attendance I want to point out, we have Mayor Greg Wheeler in the front row right here. We have school board member Allison Roeder. And they are here, they're going to join us on, oh, and one more, where'd it go? Representative Dan Griffey from the 35th District, which includes Bremerton. And I'm going to invite them to join us after the panelists. If you have a question that would be more appropriate to ask one of them, they'll be here too. So with that, I'll ask Dr. Leavell to come up and lead off.
All right, thank you very much, David. Usually when I'm up here on the podium, it's getting ready to ask everybody in the school what time it is, and all the kids say nighttime. But anyway, different topic tonight, and certainly part of nighttime here at Bremerton High. I also just want to take a quick moment and introduce, we also have another school board director here this evening. This is Miss Naomi Evans. She can wave real quick, and Dave Ruby over here on the side, and I think that might round out our board of directors. And then also want to introduce our ESD 114 superintendent, Mr. Greg Lynch, sitting in front down here. Thanks for being with us today. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here in our beautiful Performing Arts Theater at Bremerton High. My role really this evening is to kind of go through some of the things that we are actively doing in the Bremerton School District that kind of start with some programming from elementary up through our high school. We'll cover some safety and security measures as well, and also some information on mental health and the things that we're working with. But I would start off by saying, you know, as a public school superintendent, I know all too well that a parent's, you know, main concern is not about academics or athletics and, you know, as it relates to their student. It's really about safety, and it's really about them sending their children to us during the day and having their child return in as good a shape or better in the evening, right? I mean, that is the bottom line when it comes to public education. So that is, of course, our number one goal is making sure that those students are doing well with us in our care during the day. It's also our priority to make sure that we are providing a safe and thriving learning environment to the very best of our ability. And while it's impossible to read minds and it's impossible to prevent certain natural or intentional disasters, it is really our priority, though, to be as prepared as we can should those things occur. So we'll kind of walk through some of those things. So first of all, I wanted to start off, I mentioned some of our programming. Social and emotional learning, if you haven't heard that term, it's SEL, S-E-L for short. And, you know, what does that mean? So social and emotional learning is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. This is not a fancy school program. This is what we as educators do every single day. And so when you hear that acronym SEL and you hear people constantly talk about social emotional learning, it's not a negative stigma. It's just what we're doing every day with our children across America in our schools. One of our district priorities is SEL, and ongoing initiative with many supports and many trainings that really help us to make that seamless connection and relationship. And microphones. And we've been able to do that in many different ways. We were very fortunate. We received a grant from Kitsap County for their 0.1% mental health, and we were a partner, one of the partners and recipients in that grant with our OESD 114, where we were able to supply a full-time mental health specialist in a few of our schools that had the highest need. So that is one thing that we have in Bremerton. We've also instituted a parent training network around the strategies of SEL. And what we're attempting to do there is we've hired a trainer that is currently working with about 5 or 6 parents. We're starting small here, but we'll work with parents in each school who will then be able to understand more about SEL, and then they'll go out and actually train and work with other parents. So it's not always a school person doing that. It becomes parent to parent. So that is really one of the keys, of course, is our parents and our parent interaction. Currently, we are also working with a number of trainers and consultants in our district right now around some of our SEL initiatives. We're working with a gentleman named John Norland from Character Strong. We are working with a gentleman named Dr. Greg Benner from the University of Washington, and Wayne Callender. And all three of these folks are really helping us stay focused on our integrated system-wide schools support systems. And so while some of this is going to be a lot of jargon maybe for you as parents out there, please just know that it's very, very important in the work that we're doing with your children during the day, from a very young age all the way through the time that they graduate. So a few other programs, I won't maybe describe all of them at this point for the sake of time, but we are using what's called a second step program, which is really instrumental in helping to develop and strengthen social emotional students and younger students. We have a safe and civil schools program that we're utilizing K-12 for positive behavior management. And we have some peaceful playground programs that we're also using in our elementary schools. And this is really kind of an inexpensive way of increasing physical activity that helps improve recess and overall school climate before, during, and after school, as the students are learning at a young age to interact with each other when they have unstructured time, such as recess, which, by the way, is pretty much every student's one of their favorite times of the day. So it's a great time to have a little bit of that. You know, as the kids get a little older, we are bringing into our middle school program called WEB, which is an acronym for Where Everyone Belongs. And really it's meant to have an older student, like an 8th grader, connect with an incoming 6th grader. So when they're leaving elementary school, that can be a very scary transition for someone going into middle school. How many parents thought that was even scarier? It was for me. So we're really hoping to have some peer-to-peer mentoring programs like that coming into the middle school. We already have a similar program here at Bremerton High. It's called Link Crew, and it really does the same effect. It takes 8th graders that are now transitioning into high school as young freshmen, and then those freshmen are paired up with juniors and seniors who can help be a nice mentoring older student, someone that's been through the system, can kind of help them find their way, answer questions, things like that. When it comes to a lot of the different trainings that we are working with social emotional learning, we have been training our staff in what's called ACEs, and that is through, those are adverse childhood experiences and trauma-informed practices. And so with many of our families, a lot of our students are coming to school each day, and in some cases, the school might be their safest place or the environment where they get their morning and lunchtime meals and things like that. So they're coming to school with a lot of outside influences that we as educators need to understand about our students before we can ever expect that they're going to perform well academically. So to transition a little bit into the mental health efforts here in Bremerton, first and foremost, the things I was just discussing, you're wondering, well, what does that have to do with safety and security in our schools? Those are the foundational skills and aspects that we want our students to have from the school as they make their career, their journey through our schools. And eventually we don't set out in kindergarten to prevent a school shooter, right? But what we do is we want them to be students that can be highly functional throughout their journey in their life. We have elementary interventionists and counselors at our secondary schools. As I mentioned earlier, we do have one Kitsap mental health counselor split between 2 of our schools. We contract with Kitsap Mental Health for 2 programs in our school district. One is in elementary, one is at the middle school. And this is an intensive district program that serves identified students with behavior disorders or behavior issues, and it partners them with special education teachers. The goal is that these students that end up in this program get the services that they need, and we return them back to their home class or their home grade level so that they have those skills now to do better, and they go back to their normal way of life in our schools. We have received tremendous support around this region, in large part due to our OESD with the leadership of Mr. Lynch here. He has created a safety and security consortium in which we have brought together regional school districts. You might hear me talk about this a little bit later, but we have local fire departments, cities, counties, firefighters, mental health folks, social services, and school districts. And what we're trying to do is close the gap on our understanding of how we handle these issues around safety and security. How do we respond together so we're all on the same page? And so that's been a huge help for all of our districts. Through OESD, we also have a lot of crisis support and response teams. We have a suicide prevention plan. And here in Bremerton, we also have a student assistance program, which provides a full-time drug and alcohol counselor here at Bremerton High. We have a full-time district-wide behavior specialist as well that works with all schools on strategies and individual students and families. So these are just a description of some of the services that you may never know even exist in our school district that are out there and available to you, to your family, and to our students. Moving into the safety and security measures, you know, as I said, it's really about building positive, informed and aware culture and climate early on in our schools. But unfortunately, there are steps we must take to attempt to protect and prepare all students for what potential dangers and disasters that could occur, you know, while they're in our care. So, like most districts around the United States, we do monthly drills that are required by our state law that include earthquake, shelter-in-place, fire, and lockdown intruder drills. We have in-depth policies and procedures, and actually state law and protocols to address harassment, intimidation, and bullying. These occurrences can definitely be a violation of a student's safety and well-being. The Department of Emergency Management, KPREP too, they come in and help us do tabletop activities on disasters and emergencies and how to react during those. As I mentioned earlier, we're members of the Safety and Security Consortium hosted by the ESD. We are moving to a system that many districts have in place already. It's called ALICE, and it is a system for shooter-intruder situations. And ALICE is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And this system, for our parents in the audience, you will learn more about this in the upcoming school years as we move towards implementation. But this is a more active way of responding to a shooter-intruder in one of our schools, as opposed to the current and past method of lock your door, sit in the corner of the room, and hope that someone doesn't open the door and shoot all of us as we're sitting in the corner. I don't know how else to sugarcoat that. This new system gives us strategies on how to better protect ourselves and our students and how to better get out of a situation like that should it occur. We're currently in Bremerton in phase 1 of that, where we've had